so happy, everybody. Okay, so and I've had a bunch of guests in the past that I've seen in a concert at the Blue Note in New York in the mid 90s. I forget the exact date. And this is the third guest that was on that concert in the Diva Big Band. I'm so happy to have Virginia Mayhew on the Everything Saxophone podcast. Thanks for being here, Virginia.
Donna, thank you so much for having me on your podcast.
Yeah, this is so cool because, we all have experiences, that stick out in our memories, that stick out in our minds, that, just changed us or just made us feel a certain way. And I'll never forget, I was with a bunch of friends and we went to the Blue Note and we were really excited because this is mid 90s and this was a big deal to have an all-female jazz big band. It was a huge deal. And man, we were so blown away. You guys were so incredible, tight, entertaining. It wasn't like your heads were stuck in a book. Everybody looked like they were having fun. You're laughing, having a great time. And, for me as a musician, it was great to see that, have role models and all that kind of thing. So first of all, I want to thank you and all the women that were in Diva, but I'm so glad that not only that I have you here, but that was such an incredible experience for me and my friends.
Well, Sherry Miracle has done a miracle having that band. I mean, she's really made a difference. People remember that band from when you saw it. And I think they're coming up on their 30th anniversary. And, there are a lot more good female musicians now. And it's been a really good launch pad for a lot of people. And there are also people that are still in there or in there again. And it's really been an important thing, I think, for showing that women, can play. But especially when you're talking about, there was one, about Maiden Voyage in LA.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
That was another all-female big band at the time. And I never heard them. I heard they were very good, but I don't know personally.
I didn't. Yeah, that's right. I remember the name. I didn't get a chance to.
Ann Patterson, I think.
Yeah, that's right. No, it's so incredibly important. And during that time, people think, oh, 1990s. Oh, well, that's nothing wrong with that. Let me tell you, still, even like the 80s, 90s, I'm going to say it, even the early 2000s, it still was difficult for women. And, like I interviewed Camille Thurman and just the stories that she said, during the podcast, what she went through,
she's a youngin'.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy, right? It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I do want to dig into this too, because you know what I'd like to ask you, what was it like when you were in that Diva big band? If you could share some stories, some of the good times, but also some of the struggles that you guys may have had in terms of maybe booking shows or, just a negative response, if any. Hopefully there wasn't, but, we're talking back then, who knows?
Yeah, I wasn't involved in the booking. That was Stanley Kay and John LaBarbera and Sherry. I only heard good things, but people wouldn't
That's good.
say bad things to me. I mean, I don't know what people said to other people, but the response was, as you said, it was pretty unusual to see an all-female band of that quality. So as far as the public, I mean, we were loved everywhere we went, as far as what I heard. And there certainly were a lot of great musicians, and we had great charts, and it was really a lot of fun.
Cool. That's good. I'm so glad to hear that. And it's funny, I was just thinking to myself, I should have pulled out the CDs I have in the other room.
You want to get them? I can hold on.
No, it's all good. It's all good. But yeah, I'm going to pull them out later, actually. And yes, I do listen to CDs. I still like having the physical product. I still do.
We need more people like you.
Yeah, for sure, But I mean, like I said, that was such a great show. And so I grew up playing trumpet. And so Ingrid Jensen, and oh my gosh, who was the lead player? I could see her face. Lisa Whitaker,
Lisa
right?
Whitaker. Yeah.
Oh my God, they crazy good, just insane. Yeah. It was so good, and I'm so glad that you all had great positive response everywhere you went. I think it really influenced a lot of young girls who hopefully parents brought their young children, to these shows, and boys as well. But, see this.
I hope that it would be interesting to ask a bunch of, women from different generations going back from now to see if it had any effect on them. I'm sure Sherry would be glad to hear that, that you think it did. And I think it did too. Things have changed, and there certainly are a lot more good players now, but I still have people coming up to me even now saying, oh, wow, I've never seen a female saxophonist. And it's pretty hard to comprehend, but I mean, that still exists. I mean, we get wrapped up in our little world, I think, but the general public, I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Wow,
pretty surprising.
that's crazy. Is it you're in New York right now, but is that in New York, or is that just in other places of the country where,
I don't
maybe
remember where it was. It
Okay.
might have been like 3 or 4 years ago, but
Yeah.
it was shocking.
Yeah, especially, and yeah, it is shocking, especially there are so many more women now that
Mhm.
are on the scene. You have Melissa Aldana, right? Who's
Yep,
just
yep.
ridiculous, right? You have
Great
you have
musician.
Lakeisha Benjamin, who's insanely good. She's so incredible.
And
Grace Kelly is
yeah.
is just phenomenal. And then, even Candy Dulfer is just ridiculous, and she's been around for a long time. And
She's been
Mindy
around a
Abair,
long
same
time.
thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's kind of surprising, but I guess if well, I guess it's feasible if you don't know what you don't know, so if
Right.
if you've not seen, or you're in an area of the country where jazz is not popular, and then all of a sudden maybe on YouTube something comes up in your feed and you're like, what's this, then I guess that can happen. It's kind of crazy for us to understand. I grew up in New York, so, and now I live in the Los Angeles area, so like these areas it's more prominent, but in other areas of the country it just very well may not be.
Yep. I guess even with the internet.
Yeah, even with the internet. For sure, for sure. Well, I want to stay on this theme for a little bit. As we were talking a little bit beforehand, I watched one of the interviews that you had. I think it was with New Jersey. I don't know if it was NJ Pack or something like that, or Keep Music Alive in
Oh,
Jersey, whatever,
yeah.
something like that. And they were talking about, they were going through your history and stuff like that. We'll get into your journey, but they were saying that when you were younger, so you always wanted to play saxophone, and you wrote it down. I want to play saxophone, and you were told girls don't play saxophone. And I don't know if you could tap into that memory. I can personally share that I grew up playing trumpet, and I was told the same thing, but I was also expressed that by my peers more than anything else, the
Which
peer
has a
pressure.
bigger effect, probably.
Yes, absolutely. So how did that impact you, emotionally when you heard something like that?
It's hard to remember that long ago, but I don't know if I always wanted to play saxophone, but when they said, what do you want to play? And I said, saxophone, I don't know where I even got that. Maybe it was from my folks had, let's see, what was popular then? Some of the bit like Blood, Sweat, and Tears, they had saxophones. I mean, I'm not really sure how I got the idea, but when I did, and they said that, and I accepted it, of course, but you have to remember, it was not that many years before that incident. The girls still had to wear dresses to school.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a suburb of San Francisco, and I was a tomboy, and we had no grass on the, playground, but girls had to wear dresses. And so this is probably, a few years after that. And I guess I was probably used to being told, by the public, but it worked out okay for me because there wasn't the jazz education that there is now anyhow. And clarinet, as you know, is a good foundation for the saxophone. And I loved classical music, and it took me until my mid 25, like about 25, to decide which direction I really wanted to go.
Oh, all right. We're gonna definitely talk about that in a second. So let me dig into this a little bit. And from what, again, that interview and what you're saying right now, so you started off in clarinet, and you were saying it basically is a good foundation. I agree with you. I
But
really
I still
do.
should have had a choice.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. There's no question about that. But having the foundation on clarinet, how do you think that impacted your saxophone playing?
I think it impacted my saxophone playing positively. And also for big bands, which I've played in a lot of big bands, you need to have your doubles together. So my clarinet was in pretty good shape when I was practicing it. So it was good in that case. I wasn't a saxophone player trying to learn clarinet, which is a lot harder.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you to expand upon that too. So it's definitely, I feel it's definitely easier if you start off on clarinet than saxophone, instead of vice versa, because the clarinet, just the fingerings are certainly harder for sure. The embouchure is much more firmer, and there's a lot more, there's a lot of other elements involved with that.
I think, like you said, the fingerings, but also you have to actually cover holes as opposed to just pushing down pads.
Yeah.
And so your fingers have to be a lot more precise. And then all the things that your thumb and your pinkies have to do. And it overblows, not at an octave. So this might be a C and a G. It's definitely harder. And the articulation is, much more precise. It's a lot harder instrument, I think.
Yeah.
Clarinet.
Yeah, for sure. It's deceptive. People think small instrument easy. No, it's pretty deceptive. And I think, just as you said before too, having that foundation on that, and then playing in big bands later certainly helped.
Mm-hmm. I think many jazz musicians started on clarinet, saxophone players.
I think back in the day they did. I think now things are different. I think now. Yeah, for sure. And, and I think it's a lot has to do with the prominence of Kenny G and other artists like, like a Dave Koz, a David Sanborn, all those type of thing, where people are seeing saxophone, more and saying, oh, I want to play that, as opposed to, like in school being told, oh no, you'll play clarinet, and then we'll have a couple of saxophones. I think that has a big part of it.
You're in the LA area. I never really hear about, any of those guys out here. And it could just be me, but they're pretty much off the radar for me. Are they like in the public consciousness there?
I think it's actually not so much in LA. I think it's in the general public consciousness, because they have a big following. The thing is that when we're involved with more, like, let's say, straight ahead jazz and stuff, we have the people that we listen to, I can't believe his names are escaping me right now, but yeah, right. Like I'm thinking about the people I've interviewed, like Antonio Hart, Javon Jackson, all these people, those people are in our consciousness, more so, but I'm thinking like the general public, some of their first encounters are, with Kenny G, because they're seeing his name all over the place. David Sanborn was so prominent, back then. He still is, of course. Yeah, for sure. When it comes to that, but I wanted, let me go back to this. So you start off on clarinet. How long, did you talk a little bit about your beginnings and stuff? So you start off on clarinet. Was this in like fourth grade or something, or was it later on? Fifth grade clarinet.
And I know that my mom got me a saxophone somewhere along the line. It was a C melody.
Oh,
and have you ever played one?
No, I haven't. But wow, that's an interesting first start. Okay.
Well, she didn't know. She came from a classical background, and somebody sold it to her, and it played. And I was taking lessons with this guy, and eventually said, "Here, I want to let you try my horn." And he had an alto. And he let me try it. I just couldn't believe how much easier it was to play. But then I don't know what happened with that, because I don't remember really playing saxophone again until my junior year of high school. They needed was it my junior year? I don't remember, but somewhere along the way, the high school band needed an alto. Okay. And so that's when I started taking saxophone lessons. And I started taking saxophone lessons from my clarinet teacher. And it turns out he was just a jazz musician trying to make some money teaching. And so he was much more enthusiastic about teaching saxophone. And Patrick DeHart, and he said, buy these records. And Keystone Corner was in San Francisco at that time. And everybody came through there for a week, and he would say, okay, you got to get up there. You got to get there this week. And my folks were great. Even when I was underage, they would let me go up there and stay out really late. And I was a good student, so it wasn't a problem, but it's thanks to him probably. Well, first of all, my high school teacher, Ed Harris, gave me private clarinet lessons for free.
Wow.
and he was really supportive. And then Patrick DeHart told me about the Keystone Corner and who to go listen to, and that was priceless. So then I was playing both classical clarinet and saxophone. I was doing gigs in both worlds. And then I finally decided, I'm not going to ever be really good at either of these. If it's hard enough to play one, and the priorities are so completely different. I mean, some people can do it, but not me. So I decided on the saxophone.
Okay, now let's dig into this. You're in high school and all that kind of stuff, right? And then you're getting exposure to the saxophone. When did you decide that you were going to make music your career, your life?
Probably in high school.
Okay. And what led to that?
Well, thinking about going to college,
Okay.
and I loved music, and I went out to hear music a lot, and I played, with my friends and in school and everything. I don't know, it's just what I wanted to do. And so I went on clarinet to the University of Colorado in Boulder. And I just wanted to get away from home. Not that there was anything wrong at home. I just wanted to separate. And I stayed there for 2 years, but people were just not serious. I mean, the only people that were practicing most of the time were me and two trombone players that were engineering majors.
Wow.
And that was it, and so I was practicing and I was doing everything, and then I just realized, I got to get out of here. And I thought, I don't really like LA, nothing personal, and I didn't feel like I was ready to go to New York. And so I said, well, I'll go to San Francisco. I love San Francisco. And so then I went there for a year, San Francisco State, and I met my primary, my biggest mentor, Johnny Coppola, a great lead trumpet player and friend. And he was he played lead trumpet, and he played with Woody Herman, Stan Kenton. He did studio work up there, and he was just the greatest musician and person. And he just took me under his wing, and he lent me a big stack of LPs. I remember he said, okay, go home and listen to these. And then I brought him back. He said, okay, which did you like? And when I told him the ones I liked, he said, you're a throwback, because apparently, I liked all the older stuff. And that worked with him because that's sort of what he was. But I mean, he was a product of his generation, but he was really into sound and swing. And he gave me my first professional gigs on saxophone, and just babied me along, And eventually I worked my way up to be playing lead alto in his band sometimes, and small group stuff. And he was another big piece in my continuing to be a musician.
That's a great story. Let me ask you something. So like people have been giving you like stacks of records, or go to the Keystone Corner and listen to this, keep listening. So can you give people, like if you could dig into, I don't know if you can remember at the time, whatever, but like, how were you listening? What were you listening for? What, you're listening to all these LPs, what were you listening for? I'm trying to get like tips from you for listeners and stuff like that to help them in their journey.
Well, tips would be another thing. I was responding purely on an emotional level.
Oh, interesting.
Know anything about it. I didn't know anything about it. I just loved the way it made me feel, and I wanted to do that.
That's cool.
That's how I fell in love with jazz. But I had very strong opinions. I mean, pretty much everybody I saw at the Keystone Corner was a master, and I don't remember hearing anybody there that I didn't love. So thank you. I'm drawing a blank. Oh, Todd Barkan. Thank you, Todd, for that.
That's cool.
There were so many great musicians still alive and touring then. That would have been in the mid 70s.
So what kind of styles of music were you hearing?
I was hearing, I heard Dexter a bunch of times there.
Oh,
I heard
cool.
Joe Henderson. I heard Archie Shepp, which was completely different, and I loved it. George Coleman, everybody. I mean, everybody came through there, and it was so amazing. And then they would go down on Sunday to play at this place in Half Moon Bay called the Bach Dancing and Dynamite Society. And that was a fun place near the ocean. My folks would like to go. So we went to that sometimes. And I just feel so fortunate to come up at a time when all these masters were playing.
Yeah, just the fact that you remember who you saw, right? That left an impression on you.
I don't remember all of them. When Art Blakey came through, I'm sure if I sat down and made a list, I'd remember more. But they were all, all the cats that were touring then. Bill Evans, piano, and it was amazing. McCoy Tyner.
Wow. Did you
Yeah.
ever get the chance to, meet any of these people?
Um, I met George Cables once because he was playing with Dexter Gordon, and I loved a tune that he was playing called Tanya. It was on one of his records, so I went and I pestered him till he wrote down the changes for me.
Oh, that's cool.
I didn't really have much jazz education. It was nothing like it is now. I mean, these kids, I hope they appreciate how lucky they are. I didn't really have anybody really like giving me all this information and even basic stuff. So, but I got to hear the greats. So
Yeah, for sure. Let me ask you, then I'm going to go down this track for a second. You felt like you didn't get the basic stuff. How did you start learning how to improvise? What were some of the things that you did?
well, I transcribed. I transcribed a fair bit, and I played along with records a lot. And my teacher was into. He just gave me these licks, and he never really told me what to do with them. And I didn't. I mean, I did what he said, but I didn't like it, and I always, even as a kid, I always wanted to have my own, sound like myself. I didn't realize, you have to get a certain vocabulary to be able to do that. But it took me longer, I think, to get anywhere because I really didn't want to learn a bunch of licks. So I don't know how I got there. I just tried and transcribed. How did I do? I don't know. I think probably, I don't know. Just practiced a lot. I practiced a lot, and I listened to recordings. I took some theory lessons and other saxophone lessons, but nobody really helped me so much with the improvisation part.
That's really interesting. And you know what's interesting too? So, I equate this with like a lot of guitar players who, maybe they'll take lessons just to get started on the guitar, but what they always do, they always lead by ear, right? They always figure
Yeah.
things out by ear,
Yes. Yes.
and then they'll, a bunch of them, of course, will read or whatever, but you kind of did that. I mean, the thing is though, you had the classical background, you could read, like, that's
Right.
not a problem. But
Right.
my thought was like, I'm wondering how good your ear training was, classically speaking, like how much that helped you in transcribing, when you were starting to transcribe these solos on saxophone.
Well, my high school band director, Ed Harris, he did have a theory class it was called Harmony. He tortured us in that, but I don't know, other than that, it was really hard. Sometimes I'd go home with this Walter Piston book, and I'd come downstairs and read this epic sentence to my family, and it was just like a foreign language. I'm like, what? It was so confusing. Seems like, he could have made it easier. I should reread that. Walter Piston Harmony. Did you ever read that book?
Yeah, that's why.
Oh man, it was so confusing.
Yeah, I know. And the funny thing, so the contrast is you're listening to all these people, you're loving what you're hearing, and you're just transcribing. That's how you're learning. And in a sense, when you transcribed, did you transcribe by ear? Did you learn to play it, or did you like transcribe it to write it down? Like, what did you do? Do you remember? I'm making you go back.
I can't remember. I don't remember. But I've just found fairly recently this little scrap of paper that had the melody to one of Sonny's, calypsos that I wrote down, Shout It Out.
Oh,
Like
cool.
maybe the first couple of bars. That was the first thing I transcribed. And then I transcribed Dexter's solo on Watermelon Man. And
Cool.
I don't know. I don't know. Somebody must have told me to do it, I guess. But I didn't
Yeah.
have anybody check it, or I don't know. These kids today, I mean, it's just, I'm envious that they have all this help.
at their
Yeah.
fingertips when you
Yeah.
think about it. Even
Yeah.
if they're in a school, whether they're young or even, a lot of adult musicians are taking up instruments now and learning jazz improvisation. They may have played an instrument in high school,
Yes.
took off a long time, and then later on they're picking up again. They want to improvise, and there's so many, I put videos out myself, but there's so many resources, at people's fingertips and stuff,
Yeah.
for sure. But just the fact, the way that most people did it, they just put a record on, listened,
Yeah.
listen, and then, transcribed and stuff. And I think, for you, that's where you probably got your jazz vocabulary from, more so than maybe even learning those licks, I would think.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think when you get the licks and everything, you can not immediately, but quickly sound better, and it's been a very slow path of me, always when I met John Coppola, I was probably around 20. And I think he's the one that told me about, the thing about playing melodically and like a sentence, not like babble. Not that I ever did that. I didn't have that kind of facility, but and thinking about tone and stuff. So I think in the long run, it probably was good for me, but it took me longer to get anywhere. And I feel like there's still so many things I'm trying to learn. So that's good. I've got a lot to learn. I'm not bored, that's for sure.
And that's cool. And it's also awesome for people to hear, because you've played all over the place with all types of incredible people, and you have your own quartet and that kind of thing. What I'm curious about, like, let's say you were growing up now, right? And what would you have hoped your jazz education to be? Like what you mentioned, oh gosh, I transcribed it, did this, whatever. Kids today have all these advantages. What would you seek out as a kid today if you wanted to learn how to improvise?
I don't think you barely have to seek. I mean, if somebody just points you don't even have to be pointed. You can just, a little bit of, even your friends, there's just so much knowledge, as you were saying, out there. And so many, practically everybody I know is doing some teaching. It used to be, for the most part, of course, there were some exceptions like Kenny Barron and Rufus Reed and Mulgrew and different people, but for the most part, people didn't really teach, they played.
Yeah.
And now, but because the situation, the playing situation is so hard, everybody is teaching, and so the level of the teaching has gone up.
Yeah.
And so the level of the information the students are getting are from people that are, great professional musicians, as opposed to music school teachers that majored in education. You know what I mean? They are professional musicians, as opposed to professional teachers. Not to say they can't teach, but they're coming from a professional performance background.
Experience. It's the experience of doing it and stuff.
And they know what's important. Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah, I guess. And I guess the thing would be like, like if you were starting now, like, you probably would still transcribe, but maybe there's other things that you would pursue. Like you mentioned before, like you just didn't know what to do with those licks, I kind of felt the same thing too for a bit. Like I'd play through all these licks. It's great. Yes, you're hearing the vocabulary. Of course, you can get the vocabulary from transcribing, because that's where the licks came from for the most part.
Right.
But it's what to do with them. And so when you approach improvisation, you're not thinking licks. You're thinking of expressing, yourself like melodically. So that's what I hear.
Melodically.
Yeah.
Melodically and rhythmically. And I'm constantly trying to raise the bar on my harmonic approach. I have friends that are just like so incredible. Their harmonic knowledge, like Ingrid and Roberta Pickett. I play with her a lot, and it's a completely different universe. But they're very kind, and Roberta especially keeps hiring me to play and record with her. And so I'm learning these other things, and I just love them. But it's definitely it's a big step from consonant, basically consonant, to all the other stuff. So I'm hoping to get further and further on that path without losing the melodic part.
I love how you just said that, and consonant versus dissonant and stuff like that. Can you talk though about, when you're soloing, and you've been playing for a long time, you're soloing, how do you create that, I'm going to put quote unquote dissonance or tension in your solos, where, you may not have pursued, like all these different type of reharmonization techniques and stuff like that. How do you put the tension in your solos?
I don't know what you mean by tension in my case. I mean, I play blues. There's a lot of blues in my playing, I think, and that creates tension, quote unquote.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
as far as going outside the key and stuff like that, I'm working on it, but usually it's just a half step out, and I'm trying to get more of that going on. But I'm pretty much, there's a different term for them now, the notes. I guess it is half steps, notes, surrounding notes, and
Neighbor notes and stuff. Yeah.
yeah. I don't know. I think I create it through the shape of the line and the tone quality and the register and the rhythm, maybe.
Yeah,
I don't know what you think.
that's actually, no, that's actually what I was wondering, and I tend to think that too, based on what I've heard, in terms of how you play. It's definitely melodic, and yeah, I hear bluesy elements in there for sure. And like everybody has their own voice and how they bring it out, and for a lot of the listeners, and stuff, some don't want to play outside the key. They want to be consonant or whatever. And so just, you just gave some choices of what things to do, to make solos interesting and stuff.
And especially, thank you. You're such a great interviewer. My God. You're just really, really good with the keeping it questions and keeping it going. The dominant chord is probably the place that I am the most dissonant, because there are so many options on that. But I'm trying to get, so, I mean, I just played with Ellen Rowe's group at Dizzy's last night, Momentum. Do you know that? Do you have that CD?
I don't, but I saw your post on Facebook. I'm going to definitely check that out. I saw the players.
I'm sure she would send you a CD. It's absolutely fantastic music. Ellen Rowe, pianist, composer, arranger, great arranger. It's an all-female group called Momentum.
That's awesome.
About progress of women, and she honors all sorts of different women in the music. And it's Ingrid Jensen and Allison Miller, Marion Hayden from Detroit, great bass player. I don't know if you know her.
No, I don't.
Yeah, you should know her. And Lisa Parrott, have you talked to Lisa yet?
No, I haven't.
Great musician. She was the original Barry player. She's playing alto now. Tia Fuller did the recording. And then there's a former student of Ellen's, Kaylee. Oh God, I can never remember her last name, playing baritone. And the wonderful Melissa. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm forgetting her name. Trombone player. Melissa, come on, brain.
It's going to come in 2 minutes.
I don't remember. Hamilton? No, I don't know. Great trombone player. And piano, bass, drums. Yeah. And it's beautiful music. And
cool.
And everybody, she like Ellington, she writes for everybody specifically.
Oh, cool.
So the spotlights people get are places that she wrote specifically for them. And it's really great music and a great band. And I don't know how I got on that. Sorry.
No, actually, no, because I brought it there because basically, the theme for today so far, it's, like women in music, and the journey and how that's happened, but also like your own journey too. And, how you found your own voice, and, the melodicness, the bluesy inflections and all that kind of thing. And not necessarily, when you want to, if, you can, play outside the key, whatever, but, putting your own spin on how, how you craft your solos, and how you think about the lines, the phrasing, and all that kind of thing, and how to make it more exciting and stuff like that. So it's going along those lines. So yeah, let me ask more about Ellen. So are you guys touring? You played Dizzy's last night. Are you guys touring?
We tour in chunks. The next
Got
thing
it.
we have is in July, we're going to Brazil,
Oh,
which is
cool.
really exciting. But we've done a bunch of tours. We recorded and had our first tour start right when everything was shutting down. So half of our tour was canceled.
Okay.
And then since then, everything, I feel she is just such a trooper because she's gotten gigs. Okay, so we'll reschedule those, we'll get new ones. And then half of those have gotten canceled. So, but she really believes in this project, and we have had a lot of gigs also, and everybody's really into it. So she's still working with a band. She's constantly writing new music. She had a couple of new pieces last night, and it's a really great band. I can ask her to send you a CD if you want.
Oh, that would be awesome. That's really cool. And it's funny too. Here's another little mini recap too. We started off talking about Diva, right? And of course that wasn't your only thing. I'm going to ask you in a second, like how that you came to New York and stuff like that. But from Diva to now, right? Diva was a big band, but it's not a big band, but it's an ensemble,
Yes.
right? And just
Yes.
going from Diva to this, and well, again, Ingrid Jensen, so
Right.
you still have that connection. Ingrid Jensen, if you don't know who she is, she's a ridiculous trumpet player. She's just so, wow. She's just incredible. She's just really incredible. Listen to her. I don't care if you play saxophone only, just listen to Ingrid. But
And she's also now the dean of Manhattan School of Music.
oh, I didn't realize. Wow, that's incredible. Good for her. That's great.
Crazy. Yeah, it's really great.
That's huge.
Making a difference. For sure, that is huge.
Yeah. Wow.
What a
Holy
great
cow.
musician and person.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. So thinking it back in your life, like, from those early big band days to now, right? And your journey, could you have pictured yourself still, playing and doing all the things that you're doing since, when you started and stuff?
I had no idea what I was getting into. I just love the music. And, then when you're young, you think, oh, I want to succeed. I want to, get well known and bloody, bloody, bloody. And so I had a couple of little splashes along the way, but just being able to travel the places that I've traveled and get paid and play great music and meet musicians and regular people around the world. It's been incredible and such an education and such a joy. I never would have guessed. I didn't really know what I was getting into. I just love the music, and it continues to evolve. And right now, it's sort of, I'm just trying to figure out where it's evolving right now, because times have changed in pretty much everything. The business aspect and the music has changed. So that's why I'm really happy that Ellen has me, because there are so many of these wonderkins now, that can play so really well. And just hang on. I'm just going to keep being me and trying to get better. That's always been my goal.
And like I said before, it's so encouraging for people to hear, because they hear, their favorite musicians and all that kind of thing, and it's like you're so candid and so honest. You talk about. I'm going to go in this direction because this to me is important. There are people that in the jazz world that have been iconic in terms of all the shifts. Miles Davis was a part of every shift, and whether he started it, well, yeah, kind of, or was a big part of it, in terms of all the different evolutions of jazz. But Mary Lou Williams was another, and most people don't know that. And the interesting thing, when I took Antonio's class, what was I in? I went to Queens also for my master's in music education, and I saw jazz history. I'm like, I'm all over it. And Antonio Hart, I'm all over it, because when he was coming out with Roy Hargrove, and I had all those CDs and stuff, I'm like, oh my God, this is great. So he had us listening. He had us listening to the history and the evolution, and I'll never forget this, and I said this when I interviewed him. He made us all personal CDs. He gave us CDs. He burned CDs for us. Like saxophone players, this is what you're going to listen to. And I have like 8 CDs that he gave me. Trumpet players, this, all this kind of stuff. That's above and beyond. And
Are.
we had to do a presentation. We had to pick a jazz artist and do a presentation on them. And I decided to go outside the box, and I decided to choose Mary Lou Williams. I didn't know anything about her. I didn't. And boy, was I glad I did that,
Yes.
because just the impact that she had on every single, for how long she was alive, but every single evolution of jazz. Most people don't realize that,
No.
and especially as a woman. Well, first of all, they don't realize it because she was a woman. I'm going to say it,
Yep.
but as a woman doing this, so you have that special CD that you did. I think it was in 2012. Yeah, the Mary Lou Williams Next 100 Years CD. What inspired you to do that? And talk a little bit about that experience.
Well, let me say first that I knew who Mary Lou Williams was because my mentor, Johnny Coppola, had given me a CD of Don Bias, and he had an all-female band. Maybe I think it was in Paris or something. I can't remember what it was, but it was great. And so I was aware of her, but I didn't really think of her. I didn't think of her, oh, she's great for a woman or anything. Okay, she's a woman, but she was so great. And then I was getting ready to go to Italy on tour, and the pianist I worked with a lot, Tony Pancelli, he said, I've got a festival, but we need to find, some sort of hook or, something for the promoter to make it distinctive. And he's Googling, he says, well, it's going to be 100th anniversary of Mary Lou Williams' birth next year. And so I said, great. And so we both started listening. I downloaded, I think, over 100 of her tunes.
Wow.
And I picked out a bunch of them and arranged them and went over, and we did this tour. And then, and it was really fun. But when I was doing the research, somebody told me that Rutgers Institute in Newark has all of her archives and everything. And I could just call up over there, and I gave them a list of, I think, 10 or 11 tunes that I'd like to see, whatever they had. And I got there, and they rolled out a cart with these boxes. They were so amazingly organized. And I found lyrics to one of the songs, and it was just amazing. It's such a resource. I wish people knew about it. And they're so organized. And I really need to go back. I've been saying that since then, but I've got more, like her voicings and her chords. And my original intent was to do something really, different. I had this great guitar player that I worked with a lot, Kenny Wessel. He played with Ornette Coleman, very modern sound. And I thought, I really want to do something different with I want to take her music and go somewhere else. And we did a gig at the Kennedy Center, and we did some other stuff. And I just started to feel like I really wanted to put it back where it was. And so the recording that you have heard has Ed Cherry on it. And it's nothing new. It's just totally swinging blues, great tunes, Mary Lou Williams music. And but I'm always very interested when somebody does a Mary Lou Williams CD, because I wanted to go somewhere else, and I just felt like I couldn't really. So I'm interested to hear where some other people have gone. Jerry Allen did amazing things, and Deanna Witkowski. I don't know if you've interviewed her.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, she's become pretty much a Mary Lou Williams expert.
That's
Deanna
cool.
Witkowski. She lives in Pittsburgh now, I think. And anyhow, so then I got Ed, and we did a bunch of gigs, and then we recorded that. So the original intent was just trying to find a hook. And then I just discovered this amazing, the archive situation, and it's just great music.
How do you think, now this is curious, I'm curious about this. So out of this hook, out of this great story, you were able to dig into, more into Mary Lou Williams stuff. How did studying her music, playing her music, how did that impact your playing? Did it change your playing in any way?
I think it did, especially in 3/4. Because we did a couple of her tunes in 3/4 bluesy kind of stuff. And it really, I hadn't really I know there's, what's the tune, the harmonica player in 3/4.
Yeah,
The one I mean. But
I know.
But she really, I mean, I'm going to go listen to her after this. She's just so great.
Good.
But I think it just made me feel comfortable with who I am musically, because I felt like, not that I'm anywhere near that level, but that's my language. I feel that music and the beautiful haunting Medi one that she wrote, and it was a lot of work, that project, and I think it had to have affected me, and I really enjoyed it so much.
Do you think that particular project, I know this may be a hard question to answer, but which of the projects that you've done? I think you have 6 albums out. I'm not sure if there's been more,
I
but
got one in the can for way too long.
oh,
Soon,
oh,
yeah.
oh, good. All right, good. So, but which of the projects do you feel had the most impact on you? Would it have been that Mary Lou Williams one, or do you think there were
On me,
others? Yeah.
what kind of impact?
I guess in terms of, like changing your not approach to playing, I guess, but helping you grow maybe musically or different insight or whatever.
My records usually come out of whatever I've been working on, and then go in the studio. I think probably preparing for my first septet record, and for this next one is basically a septet record. That involved a lot of arranging. And so maybe, I mean, I'm not sure I can really answer that question, because I feel like usually it's just part of it's more documenting where I was at that.
Okay.
This is what I've been doing. Okay, here's what I've been doing. And so I don't know if I can really answer that question, but the arranging that I've had to do, wanted to do more arranging for that, and the Duke Ellington Legacy
Yes.
group. That's been great. We haven't really been doing much for quite a few years, but we do a couple gigs a year.
Right, right. Yeah. So let's talk about that too, because you have wait, it wasn't, no, it wasn't was it Thank You, Edward? I forgot the name of the
Thank you,
Thank You,
Uncle
Edward.
Edward.
Uncle
And
Edward,
then,
that's right.
Single Petal of a Rose, the two of them.
Right. So how long have you been involved with the Duke Ellington Legacy Project?
I'm from the beginning.
Okay. So
Which,
which was what, like 2008 or something?
maybe.
Okay,
I'm not
got
sure
it.
exactly. Yeah.
Got it.
We
Cool.
sort of went along for a while, and then pretty soon, eventually, the band coalesced, and Edward Ellington, Duke's grandson, you know, he helped keep the band going, and paid for the recording. And we had Norman Simmons, the great Norman Simmons. He did most of our arrangements, and it was just so much fun.
That's
That
cool.
that is still a really great experience, that band.
That's awesome. Let me I'm going to jump back to when you first came on the scene, so to speak. So, we're going to go back to the beginning, like you were playing, you went from Colorado, you went back to San Francisco, you started to play over there. When did you come to New York? What was that like for you? Trying to get gigs around, like, what was it, 1987 or something to that effect, or
Yeah,
maybe
wow.
after?
You've done your research.
That's when I graduated high school.
Yeah,
So
oh,
just stuck on it.
wow.
Yeah,
Okay, so that helps.
yeah.
Well, I was in San Francisco for 7 years, and I started to be, a much better player, because I didn't really learn anything about jazz when I was in Colorado, other than what I was able to figure out myself. And so I was there 7 years, and I was doing I was playing with a lot of the better bands there. And although there were some giants of jazz there, like Joe Henderson, Bobby Hutcherson lived nearby, there were some great people there. I just felt like my peers, they just weren't passionate enough. That, like, do you want to have, you want to play, you want to have a session? And Mark Levine was there. He was always full of energy, but I just decided that I actually, the first thing I decided was, I'd been playing with the band. I put a lot of work into it, and got us a good gig, and got the reviewer from the San Francisco Chronicle to come. It was a big deal. And we had just finished a set when he came in. And so I went up to the leader and said, he's here. We should really play some more. And the band leader was drunk and got on the mic and berated me about taking a break, blah, 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 blah. And that was when I decided,
Wow.
I got to get out of here. And I had just seen that was Halloween of '86, and in the November issue of '86, I saw an ad in the Musicians Union about the new school program starting.
Oh, right. That's right. Okay, yeah. That was a big
And they,
deal. Yeah.
yeah, and so then I flew to New York with my mom and decided to move here. And I moved here January 6th of '87. I just had it. I was just like, I put so much work into it, and I was already frustrated because there weren't enough people that were really excited about it. So that's how I got to New York. And then I was so lucky to go there. I mean, Arnie Lawrence was just such a great jazz musician, and he brought in all the masters, and the faculty was a who's who of who I had on my records. It was amazing.
Wow.
And every night it was a problem of who to go see. I mean, every night there were 3 or 4 people that you just had to see, and they were all alive. And Arnie arranged special deals with all the clubs that we could get in for the second set for either free or $5.
Oh, that's great.
And Bradley's, do you remember Bradley's?
No, I don't remember that. Huh.
Bradley's, it was on University, I think around 11th, which was right near where the new school was. And it was a small place, usually piano duos, and they had amazing music there, the top of the heap. And then that's where the legends would go to hang later. And so it was unbelievable. And just boom. So immediately I was sort of plugged in on a certain level, and the students, they accepted a wide variety of students because it was a new program, but they had Larry Goldings was there, and I'm pretty sure Kevin Hayes was there, Brad Meldau was there, and Leon Parker was always hanging around. I mean, it was just really, really small and hands-on. And Arnie just babied us along and showed us the spirit of what the music is, the joy of it, and to listen. That was his main thing, was listen to what's going on. It's not just about your solo, it's the whole, always, it's everything. It's the group. And that had a big impact on me too. I'm always listening to what's happening in the rhythm section. I'm fortunate I get to play with great rhythm sections almost always. So it was just an amazing opportunity for me.
And just what you said before too, I remember that school opening. That was a big deal because you had the stalwarts kind of complaining in a sense. It's like, oh, a new school. That's. You're competing against Manhattan School of Music. And Juilliard.
They didn't have a jazz program then, though.
Manhattan didn't. Wait a minute. I'm trying to remember. Manhattan didn't have a jazz program?
I don't think so.
I know Juilliard didn't. That took a long time.
I could be mistaken, but I don't think so. But okay. I could be mistaken.
Okay, but I remember though that it was seen as, oh, this new school, what's going to come of this? Is this really that good? And that kind of thing. Like that was the buzz that was going around, and just the fact that you had, I'm going to call it like a premium experience, meaning that a smaller class, so to speak. Mm-hmm. You had that personalized attention, and what that did for you, and how that changed you, and mm-hmm. How did you start getting established in the scene? Was it the connections you made with all your peers in your classes? And also, like Arnie, did he help set you guys up?
He did get us one gig at a little hole-in-the-wall place, which was great. And we were happy to play there, the Boburn Cafe. And I don't know what. I talked a friend of mine into moving to town, Rebecca Franks, great trumpet player. I don't know if you know her.
Yeah,
And we just started, we put a couple of, we started putting a little book together, and then Arnie got us this gig. And so we did, more charts and playing, and then I used the funds for my senior project to record that band, and it just sort of, we knew everybody. It was the masters were coming and teaching every day. it was unbelievable. And everybody has an opinion, and not everybody agrees about everything, obviously, but if such and such says this, that is something worth considering. You know what I mean? It's not just some teacher somewhere. This is whoever, blah blah blah, Jackie Byard or Junior Mance or whoever it is. Right. I felt like I was getting a real honest jazz musician from jazz musicians, jazz education.
Let me ask you something. So, two things here. Someone, like a Jackie Byard or an Arnie Lawrence says something to you. You do it, right? You follow their advice and you try it out. And if it works for you, great. If it doesn't work for you, great, right? That was the approach, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's okay. Now, do you remember, does anything stand out? Like, what were some of the biggest pieces of advice or tips that you got during your time at the new school that really impacted you, that changed the way you looked at improvising? Do you remember?
Well, the one for sure that Arnie always stressed was listen. And no one ever said that to me before.
You did it though. You naturally did it, but did he
I probably did, but I became super conscious of listening, not just like, oh, I'm listening to what's going on. No, but like really listening.
Okay, can you expand upon that? Like, so, a lot of people say just listen. So did he tell you what to listen for or how to listen?
No.
Okay.
No, but we were all listening. So the group was much more interactive, but it didn't go to the point that everybody was copying what everybody played. It wasn't like that, but we all played, I think, a little less. Maybe, I don't know. You'd have to ask some of the other people. That was the first experience I had with like really, really listening and knowing that we were listening to each other, and being able to, it only works with great musicians because otherwise people tend to just play too much, I think, or not listen but I think it's an essential concept. Some people, maybe they comp too much, or they just play until they have to take a breath, and then they take a breath, and then they just keep playing. And I think that was probably the biggest thing. And another thing that he said was, first week I was there, and we were walking to, do you remember the Angry Squire?
Yeah.
7th Avenue, 23rd.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So we were walking there together, and this homeless guy sort of lunged out at us, it seemed to me. And Arnie said, "Don't be afraid. Just be alert and aware. Never afraid." And so that I found very helpful also, because that was not part of my experience to have homeless people around, getting in your face and stuff. And your vibe, what your vibe is has a lot to do with how they approach you, probably. And anyhow, so many great teachers, so much knowledge. I'd have to sit down and think about that to really be able to answer your question.
I hope that one of the things, when we're done, I hope this, makes you think for a second and be like, oh yeah, you know what? Let me think back. Let me contact some of these people and see. I'm just thinking that would be pretty cool if you did that, because you may, be like, oh yeah, I remember when we did that and we did that. That would be actually pretty cool.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. Maybe I will do that. I can reach out to some of the people I'm still in touch with. That was really fun. Man, Arnie Lawrence. And he put us, for me at least, in really uncomfortable positions, like, okay, we're going to do a dance, and that wasn't part of my history. And I'm I forget. Hey, what was his name? Lester Bowie.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You remember him?
Yeah.
He had Lester Bowie come to the school one time. It's a blur exactly what happened, but it was just the most amazing, whatever he created, something. We were all together. I don't remember what he did, but it was just emotion. It was so emotional. It wasn't, I guess that would be a good word for the education. There was an emotional component. It wasn't just, okay, you have to learn this and this and this. And I just feel so unbelievably lucky to have been there at that time.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny, you talked about that piece of advice that Arnie gave you when the homeless person lunged at you. But what's interesting, like the alert and aware, that also directly relates to the other thing that he said to listen. And I misinterpreted you.
Mm.
What he said to listen, I'm thinking like listen to records. No, listen to each other on the stage.
Yes. Yeah, yeah, yes, yes.
Okay, and then I was getting it when you were talking about that and how um you also have to be alert and aware when you're on the
Mhm.
stage with people, and you can't be alert and aware. It's sort of like people having a conversation, so we're having an awesome conversation right now, and I'm hearing you and you're hearing me, and we're reacting, we're improvising, because I
Mhm.
don't have questions for you. I just want to talk, so we're having a conversation right now, and we're reacting to each other, we're listening, we're aware, and
Mhm.
it's the same thing as improvisation too. So everything, all those tips kind of,
Mm.
are related to each other.
I hadn't realized that, but you're absolutely right.
That's pretty
Absolutely
cool.
right.
And
Mhm.
you know what? I'm gonna go totally like in like left field for this one. But I also heard, when I was doing some research, that you studied karate for a while.
Long time, over 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And my training has been a little erratic for the last chunk of years, but it's been a key part of my life. The founder and my teacher, Kaicho Tadashi Nakamura, um, came from Japan, started his own style of traditional martial arts, traditional karate, and not just the kicking and punching and fighting and all of those things, but also I don't know what you would call it, but like life ideas about how to live your life. Well, one of his lectures is Ren Ma, which is constant polishing. Um, and that I like that one so much that I named my record label Ren Ma.
That's where that came from. Oh,
Yep.
got it. Okay.
And he's an amazing. I mean, I could talk about him for an hour with no problem. But I asked him to be on my Sandan Shuffle CD. I just think all I could say is no, right? And so he said yes. And then I asked him if he would draw the calligraphy for me of that. Hold on.
Wow. I'm so glad you mentioned that. I was so curious about, I was trying to figure out where is that name coming from for her recording label. Okay, got it. And now if you're watching the video, folks, if you listen to the audio, watch the video because this is really, really cool. That's awesome.
Sort of out of focus. He did a horizontal one and a vertical. I mean, they're just
Wow.
gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's amazing. But he has just been the biggest influence, outside of my parents and grandparents on my life. I mean, I've learned so much from him.
How has that impacted your improvisation, if any? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, I just did this thing. Speaking of saxophone journeys, the thing I just did in Pittsburgh with Faustina Dixon,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
I'd like to tell you about that because that seems to go with what you're talking about. There's something that Kaicho talks about called beginner's mind, which is getting rid of your ego and just, don't think you know everything. And that way you can learn things, and that has been, I think that's been really helpful for me to, you know, ask questions and keep growing and not just get stuck. And I mean, I could talk for an hour about everything I've learned from him, but it's just he's been an amazing role model, and he a lot of the values that I grew up with, he also has those, and but then some other things that I never would have thought about. Just I feel like my life is immeasurably better because I happened to stumble in his dojo
And
in 1987.
1987. Oh, wow. Okay. So, what's really great about this is that, and I picked this up from the very beginning, you're so humble, right? And, you're always saying, I always want to learn, I want to get better, I want to do this, all that kind of stuff. And that comes from that idea of the beginner's mind, and having I'm going to say it, having the courage to have a beginner's mind, because when we get older as adults, we have this
Mm,
sense of pride, and
hmm.
sometimes our pride prevents us from having the
Yes.
beginner's mind because, we don't want to look bad. But
Hmm.
it's not about looking bad. It's about when you want to grow, you need to have an open mind. You need to have the mind of a child.
Hmm.
When I studied trumpet with Vince Panzarella, and he would always say to me,
Ah, yes.
Vince was a great
Yes,
guy.
I know. I took a lesson with him once for the breathing bag.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I still have my breathing bag in my trumpet case. Yes, the breathing bag. If you don't know what we're talking about, well, it's definitely interesting. But Vince was great. Vince was my main mentor. I mean, he just
Wow.
totally changed me, and
Sure.
he was a great guy, very strict. You don't cross Vince, but he could also be very funny too. But he always said to me, most people don't do this, but have the curiosity of a child. Think about a young child in a sandbox.
Mm.
Most young children will like run all over the place and experiment with things and flop
Yeah.
around, and, in the playground and all that kind of thing. And when you're, and this was classical lessons, but it goes with classical jazz. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Having having the courage to allow yourself to feel what it would feel like to be that young child, because then you learn so much from that, and it's, you're just saying this right here, and it's funny. The your record label, like your website too. I'm like, that's interesting. Why is that? I'm so glad that you said that, and the fact that he's on the cover of the CD, that explains a
Mhm.
lot too. That's cool. That's really cool.
Such an honor. But going back to what I think was your question, I mean, in the fighting aspect of karate is a lot like improvising jazz because you have to be focused and paying attention and completely connected to what's going on, and you have to be able to respond right away. And it's very exciting.
Yeah, and it keeps you well alert for sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Because especially like you're improvising on a tune, you have your set list, whatever. And, it's never really set in stone. I mean, your beginnings
right.
and endings, you're going to, you want to keep those tight, but in the middle, like things are going to happen because you're improvising, you're having a conversation. Um, and we all go through this, like, when we're first learning how to improvise, it's like, there's so many things, it's overwhelming. And our thinking is like, okay, it's about me and my notes and my rhythms. But
Mhm.
then when you get to a certain, point in your life, it's like, no, it's not just about that. I need to expand. Improvisation is not, this is not a podcast of me talking all the time. It's about
Right.
us having a conversation.
Mhm.
And I think it's having the realization that once you develop a certain set of skills, to allow yourself to step back and have that conversation.
Mhm. Yeah, I think
And
so
that's
too.
that's what, like, and when you're first starting martial arts as well, you're learning the techniques, you're learning the katas, you're learning, the blocking systems, the striking and all that kind of, I have a martial arts background too.
I
So
can tell.
yeah, so
I'd
it's
love to
my,
hear about that. I don't know if this is the time, but
yeah, it's basically Bofeng Do, which is a it's an offshoot of Kung Fu. It's for multiple assailant fighting. So my
wow.
master, Phil Messina, yeah, was a big impact in my life as well, And so like, with our school, yeah, I was there for quite a while. 10 years, 9.5 to get my black belt.
Oh,
And then,
good.
yeah, and
Not giving them away.
no, they don't. In fact, I was actually one of the, most people get them in 10 years or later. So I got it in 9.5.
Wow.
So that was really cool. And it changed my life. It changed my perspective on a lot of things. And, um, I like to relate things together. So you could see that, so I know like with martial arts, you have to develop a certain mindset. But when you're first starting, whether it's martial arts, whether it's playing an instrument, not just jazz, but playing an instrument, your focus has to be on certain things, and it's centered on certain things. But as you get better, you can be more relaxed so that you can incorporate more things in. And I think Arnie Lawrence saying to you, listen to each other. You were doing that before in San Francisco, but to have that experience and that premium experience of having everybody, supporting each other and you're all in the same boat with this brand new program, all these excellent people coming in, it just heightened it. It just heightened it. And the martial arts thing, I think absolutely, from what you're saying, allowed you to gave you that alertness to be able to do that. And probably subconsciously, if you started in 1987, just going through those lessons week after week after week, I think that it absolutely has an impact with improvisation. And I'm not saying to everybody, okay, join a martial art, it's going to improve your improvisation. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, though, with a lot of people that I've spoken to, Antonio Hart too.
Yeah.
Okay.
What style is he?
Oh gosh, you know what? I forgot. I'm embarrassed to say this because I think he still goes, he still studies. He's so humble. He's the most humble, incredible person, but it has had a huge impact on his life too. So it's that whole connection there. I think that's really, really incredible. And I'm glad that I asked that question. But I did want to touch upon, you had the Ellen Rowe project, but also the Pittsburgh project as well. That just happened. Yes. Can you talk about that?
Okay. 5 women saxophone journeys. The alto saxophonist Faustina Dixon got a grant to do this thing with the Manchester Craftsmen's Guild. And hopefully it will become a documentary. And she organized, the idea was to get 5 women that have been in the world for a while and just see what's happened. And it was so great because 2 of the women I didn't really know, Faustina and Erica Lindsay. And then the other 2, Laura Dreyer and Sue Terry, we were in the original Diva together. And so that was 30 years ago, basically. And it was so wonderful to catch up and see, what everybody is doing with their lives. And we had a group interview and we had individual interviews and we had a concert. Everybody arranged a couple of tunes for a concert with a local Pittsburgh good rhythm section. And it was just such a pleasure. And in our society, being over 30 is, you often start getting forgotten more and more, unless you're really a famous person. So I really appreciated that. And it was just so interesting to see where everybody has gone, in 30 years, or the ones that I hadn't met before.
Yeah, that is so remarkable. And I'm wondering, are there going to be more? Are there going to be more concerts from that, or is the focus going to be the documentary?
I don't know, but everybody agreed that we would love to do this some more.
That's good.
So, it's a lot of work for her. So,
sure.
But I'm hoping that she will be able to use the material from the recording of the concert and everything to put together a package to get more work. Do you think that's something people would be interested in going to?
I think so. Yeah, absolutely. And, hitting other parts of the country. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely think so.
Go to that? Have any interest in that?
I think so. Yeah, for sure. And I think, again, this is so funny too. Wow. From the very beginning, we talked about Diva, right? And now look at the evolution, right? All the stuff that's happened since. And then, you have these types of projects that, you couldn't even conceive of. I'm going to say it. You couldn't even conceive of this in the 80s and the 90s. You just couldn't, of having, so women are able to put out these types of projects where, you had Diva, but you didn't have a whole bunch of women big bands at the time. You know what I mean? You didn't have a lot of women-led quartets, you know what I mean? To now where, it's definitely happening, and having more of this and having more of these types of concerts, so you don't keep getting the question, a female playing saxophone, wow, that's odd. I think would definitely have an impact.
I hope so. We need more places to play, that's for sure.
Yeah, let's talk about that too, in a sense, places to play. So I wanted to ask also, because things have changed a lot, and with the pandemic, that really was devastating to a lot of people. How did you handle, everything got shut down, like the Ellen Rowe project? You had concerts lined up, momentum, no momentum. It went from momentum to no momentum. Jesus.
Good one.
And I didn't mean that in a bad way, but just trying to be punny. But yeah, so you got all these concerts, and then all of a sudden it's gone. So how did you handle that for yourself?
Well, my mother was unwell in California, and my
Oh,
stepfather had dementia, and so he was in a nice place and everything. And I spent most of the pandemic out there taking
wow,
care of them.
wow.
And then my stepfather died in December 2020 from COVID in the facility, which I knew was going to happen, but no, nothing. The person that was supposed to be taking care of that responsibility, my stepbrother, didn't want to hear anything about it, and
Mm,
so he died of COVID.
wow.
And then my mom lived another year, and then she died
Oh,
here
wow.
in January. So I spent a lot of time there, but it was really, I feel it was such a hard time for everybody,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know. And I mean, I was able to get some help, I got a couple of grants, and I got the money that everybody got, and that was really helpful. But as far as timing goes, I mean, it was a good time for that to happen because I didn't have any gigs.
And you could spend the time. You could spend the time with your family.
Yeah. Well, my mom. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was really I think I'm pretty much recovered now, but it was completely heartbreaking and overwhelming for years.
Oh gosh, so sorry.
Going through
Yeah.
that. Are your parents still alive?
Yes, they are. Yeah, they
I
are.
hope you enjoy them.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun.
Good.
We definitely do funny things. All that stuff that you saw on the Ellen show, the pranks. Yeah, my mom's been doing that for a long time. So
Oh,
I've
great.
taken upon those types of things and passed that on,
Oh,
for
great.
sure. Yeah, we tend to have a lot of fun for sure. But I'm glad though that you did have the time that you
Yep.
could, to process this and all that kind of stuff. But the gigs are starting to pick up now. But you had alluded before though that, it's definitely a different world in terms of gigs and stuff like that, from the 80s, 90s to
Yeah.
now. Can
Mhm.
you talk about that a little bit?
Well, in the 80s, I said at the beginning, and you think you're young, and you think you want to make it, quote unquote. And you don't, I mean, some people do, quote, make it, but most people don't ever make whatever that means as far as, constantly touring. I mean, some people do, but I made my splashes, and I've had lots of gigs, and and I have toured, and I have recorded with lots of people, and all that stuff. But I've always had steady gigs, and I've always had like little gigs and medium gigs and big high profile gigs. Um, and I don't have any steady gigs right now. I mean, I have been off the scene taking care of my folks, so that's part of it. But everybody is saying the same thing. Uh, Everybody's teaching, the gigs just don't pay. A lot of the people that were running the tours have retired, and
Oh, wow.
people are just trying to figure it out. And then there are all these thousands and thousands of, really good young people who will play for free, which I remember Junior Mance telling me, you kids, playing for free, you're going to ruin this for everybody. I'm like, yeah, but we want to play, you're young and you want to play. And okay, so if you get dinner and tips, when you're young, and it's great. But that did happen. Now people they're I need to find out. I need to find more places to play. I need to finish my record. That's what I have to do first. I need
Yeah,
to
yeah.
update my website, but I need to finish my record, and I just don't know where my place is in the world at this point, because I just don't know where I fit in now. So that's what I have to figure out.
And that's your next journey. That's your next
Yeah.
journey. And I think like all that martial arts training and that mindset thought, I think is going to definitely inspire you to find whatever you need to find, for that. Because the thing is, as we mentioned before, the scene is definitely changing. Jazz is evolving. It's something that's what jazz is supposed to be. It's supposed to be an evolving type of art. It's just people are trying to figure out what is it evolving to. And, with social media having a massive impact on that as well, that's the other component. But here's the interesting thing, though, that I've seen. There's still a tremendous appreciation for people, wanting to learn standards and wanting to hear the older songs and appreciate. Really? Yeah, for sure. I hear this all the time from all of my students and all the, even people that I gig with and stuff like that. I play like a lot of blues stuff. I play a lot of solo gigs. I play other types of things. But yeah, there's still that appreciation. And when I do private parties and stuff like that, like, for example, I played a private party for 100th birthday. This was so cool. So this woman was 100. Now she grew up in Baltimore, and this was a number of years ago. And at the time, Jim Crow laws were still in effect. It was really bad. And just the evolution, this woman growing up from Baltimore, and then she becomes vice president of a university out here. That was, I love doing these kind of parties and finding out about people, and these kind of things. But anyway, I played all jazz standards because that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
So certain pockets, definitely have the appreciation, and Europe certainly has more of an appreciation for jazz. From all the people I've interviewed and stuff, they oh my gosh, Max Ionata, even the European people, Pernille Bavort, Alexander Betts, who also has done like run tours and stuff like that. But yeah, like the scene is still fine in Europe from what I hear, I
heard the opposite, that the Europeans are not really that interested in having Americans come over anymore.
Okay. All right. Then, yeah, I'm not sure
but
that.
I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know. I can just say myself, I haven't been to Europe in a number of years now. And I used to go every year.
I've always known that they've had more of an appreciation, than Americans, for sure. Yes. And I know a bunch of people have said like Japan, absolutely appreciates jazz, and has a deep appreciation for that as well. But, yeah, I guess it depends on who we've spoken to or whatever, but it doesn't matter. I guess the point is that I think everything's evolving in its own way. Yes. And I think there is room for everybody, depending on, like what you like. But the one main theme too here is, your sense of humbleness, but also your joy. What led you into going to music was because you loved music. And it's so obvious. It's so obvious. And, you've played with, all these people, you're dropping names here and there, and it's not to brag. No, it's because you've played with all these people, and, you may not realize it, but that's incredibly impressive.
All the time. I just feel lucky.
And that's the whole thing. And that's your outlook. And I appreciate having you on the podcast. Now, before we go, though, how can people find you, social media? How can they find you online?
Well, I have Twitter and I have Instagram, but I've been pretty negligent about them. But I do have Virginia Mayhew Jazz on Facebook. It might be full. I don't know. If you're still limited to 5,000 people, then that one might be full. And then there's another Virginia Mayhew one.
Yeah, you're close to 5,000. You're like maybe 7 people or so away or something like that.
I deleted some people, but I have a second page. So you can try that. Or just email me. I'd love to hear from anybody.
Would you mind, or I'll put it in the show notes. You can give me your email address and I'll definitely put it in the description for sure. Okay. And your website. It's on my website,
so it's not a secret.
Right. And your website, again, can you?
Yep. Renma. I haven't been there in so long. Renma Recordings or Renma Music. I don't remember. I haven't been there. I got to get. We're going to put that. Knows a great website designer? Please let me know.
Oh, okay. All right. And we'll talk about that. And yeah, for sure. So we'll put all your links in the show notes. But listen, it's been such a pleasure talking with you.
It has been my pleasure. Totally. This is the most fun interview I've ever done.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hope to see you soon.